Hi folks, this is Mod 5 again, the novice problems, and we're looking at problem 5 again. This time we're going to solve this problem with Excel and Minitab as opposed to using Excel Miner. Excel Miner is great, but as I said before, a commercial piece of software doing data mining sometimes can be expensive, and there are ways of getting around that can avoid that kind of expense if your organization is not capable of absorbing it. So how do we do that? How do we take the information that we had in problem 5 before, and we create that scatter diagram where we can do the visual modeling of the data such that we can create rules, simple heuristic rules that say anything above this value is a rejection of the loan. Anything below this value is approval of the loan, etc. So again, we have to create a graph just like we did with Excel Miner. I'm going to start by creating it in Minitab, because Minitab has some capabilities that Excel doesn't. So here's our data. The data that we're interested in is revolving utilization and the credit score. I've cut that out and placed it down here just below by itself because I need it in contiguous columns. I also need the decision because that's a part of our data. This couplet of credit score and revolving utilization is designated as an approval. This couplet of credit score 673 and 70% is one that is designated as a rejection. So I put up my data in a place where I can readily get at it. I'm going to copy this data, and I'm going to move it over to Minitab. I go to Minitab, and you can see I've already placed it in Minitab. There it is. Here's the data could be pasted into it anywhere, but I've done it here. So let's see if we can create a scatter diagram with this data. Obviously, we'll want to go to Graph. We want to go to Scatter Plot. And here's a simple scatter plot that would allow us to create a scatter plot without the distinction of this decision. But this thing called with groups says I can organize these couplets, these numbers, two numbers, into groups. And of course, we have two groups. One is approve and one is reject. So let's try this guy and hit OK. And I'm going to remove the stuff that was in here before. Here are our numbers. It wants to know what is the x-axis and what is the y-axis. We know that the x-axis is going to be utilization, so I'm going to hit that and select it. That puts it in the x. Then I'm going to put the credit score. I put my cursor there. I put my cursor on the credit score, I hit select, and it puts it into the y-axis. And then it says, all right, I'm going to take this out because that was there from previously. It says, I want a categorical value to identify this thing as either approve or reject. And I think I can have up to 4 categorical values. I'm going to hit decision, hit select, and now I'm ready to go. There are some other things that I can do with the graph here that I won't bother with, but I'm going to hit go. And here's the graph that I get. Notice that the blue is approval, the red is rejection, and just like we had before, we now have an opportunity to use this visualization that says, hey, this one seems to be about the lowest value for our approvals, and it looks like it's at 25% utilization, and what was it? 642 is a credit score. So we would draw a line across here. I think this one is a little lower than that. This is at 639, so just out of reach. So this line would go just above that. So anything above is approval, anything below is rejection, and we have 2 errors that occur as a result of that. So this is how we can get the similar graph that we got before. Minitab has that capability of assigning these things into groups, which is what Excel Miner was doing was saying, all right, I know that this is a couplet of numbers, but I can also associate with that a categorical value. And the categorical value is either approve or reject. Let's go back to Excel and see how we're going to do this in Excel. This is a little bit more difficult task, but you can do it. The first thing I need to do is I will tell you that to create a graph, a scatter diagram that has two different designations, approve or reject, it's got to be handled through doing something that is called, creating a particular series. And the series we want to create are all those that are associated with approval and all those that are associated with rejection. If I just grab this data without consideration of rejection or approval, I can easily go to scatter diagram. And there's my scatter diagram. It looks a little odd because the scale is odd, so I'm going to format I can format the axis and say, I don't need it to go to 0. Let's go to about, looks like 450 here, 450. And there now, it's starting to look kind of like the graph that we had before. But notice all the dots are blue. That doesn't do me any good. I need to know the difference between what is approved and what is rejected. So I'm going to get rid of this guy and show you how we can do this. The first thing I need to do is I need to organize this data into approved and rejected. It looks like it's almost there, except there are a couple up here that are reject. The way to manage this is to sort this data, custom sort, on the decision axis. And it doesn't matter whether it's reject or approve. We'll do it from A to Z. And now all the approvals are here, and there are 23 approvals. Let me get rid of this errant line. And there are 27 rejections, which add up to 50. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this data all the way up to the last approve, and I'm going to say, all right, help me create a scatter diagram. And there's my data. I'm going to change the scale again because it's offensive to me at this point. I'm going to make this 450 because I think that's about the lowest number we see. So now I have the beginnings of just one group of data. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our data and say, that was my approval data. Now I'm going to grab and by the way, let me go to the graph for a second here. And I'm going to select the data. Here's my data, revolving utilization. And I'm going to call that approval, because that was the approval data. Okay. I'm also going to format this series. I'm going to go over here to Effects, to the little paint bucket. I'm going to get this marker options. I'm going to choose a different marker for it to begin with. Go to built-in, and let me use this little triangle. I'm going to make it larger so it's easier to see. And there's, you can see the changes that occur there. So now what I want to do is add another series. I'm going to grab all the rejection data, all the couplets are part of rejection. And I'm just going to copy them. I just did a Control-C. I'm going to go back here and touch the diagram, and I'm going to hit the Control-V. What I've got now is two series. Let me go to select data. I'm going to undo what I just did there. I'm glad that we're doing this. I'm going to go to select data. I'm going to add a series. I'm going to call it rejects. I'm going to then select the X value starting here, going to the bottom. I'm going to select the Y value starting here and going to the bottom. I'm going to hit OK. Hit OK again. And if we go to our graph, now we've successfully done it. Now, I apologize for that little hiccup. We've successfully done it. So the second series has got to be entered by hand. I create a series, and I say, here's the X and here's the Y. And of course, I can right-click this. I can format the data series just as I did before. I can go to my little bucket. I can say, I want a different marker option. I go to built-in. I already got these little blue TPs. Why don't I make this a diamond and make this a little larger? And there we are. A very similar graph to what we had before. The axes are turned around. I've got the credit rating here and the utilization, revolving utilization on the other axis. The way to change that was to move those two columns in our area that we had below with this one over here and this one over here. But the picture is still the same. And so we can draw our lines and we can, create our partitions and say, okay, here's my rule for doing this. This is just turned 90 degrees on its side. All right, that shows you how we can skin the proverbial cat in many different ways. So fear not if you don't have that expensive data analytics package on your desk. You can still do very clever visualization with Excel and Minitab. That's the end of Problem 5, Module 5 in the Excel and Minitab format.